Hi! Today we're going to talk about Stormlight Arc 2, which obviously doesn't exist yet, but since Wind and Truth came out in December of last year, 2024, we have until 2031, allegedly, for the next book to come out, and what better use of our time until then than to ponder and theorize on what's coming next. So, this video is going to cover most of, if not all, of my big thoughts and theories about what might happen, what we can expect in Stormlight Arc 2. So I realize that Wind and Truth is very hotly debated online, but whether you liked the book or not, that's how Arc 1 ended. I think the ending was fine. I think the ending was good for some characters, better for others. I would say generally my feelings are pretty positive about the way that Arc 1 ended, in the sense that I'm satisfied to wait for answers. I have enough questions to sustain me until 2031, which is part of why we're here talking about these things. I know that a lot of people are very frustrated by the questions, but that's how you end an arc. You end an arc with questions. In an interview with Smitty, or Vino Poppy 143, I believe, on TikTok, Brandon had said that there was a strength to leaving an audience sufficiently frustrated with the amount of questions that they have, and I really feel the same. I think that we have so much up in the air, so much confusion. Some of it I think isn't as bad or won't be as bad as some people believe, and others I think some things are going to be way worse than we can imagine. One thing that we all know Brandon is very good at, especially in the Stormlight Archive, is traumatizing his characters and traumatizing us readers as well. There's going to be some stuff, I'm sure, to happen in the back half that are going to be just as, if not more, heavy-hitting than some of the losses, pitfalls that we had in Arc 1. I also think that there will be some epic highs, and obviously, the one strength that me and some other fellow Cosmere fans have discussed a lot about Brandon's writing and about sort of where he goes in these places is that no matter how bleak it may seem, there's always hope. There's always this undercurrent of hope. The loss of Dalinar at the end of Wind and Truth, there's this devastating feeling of we lost, accompanied by this hope and this faith that he has in the people he's leaving behind, saying, I can't do this, but they can, and I will buy them time to do so. That's hope. That's hope, and I'm very excited to see sort of where it goes. Let's get into some of these thoughts and theories. Please, please, please leave your thoughts and theories down below. Also, let me know what you think of mine, because some of mine people have been pretty indifferent about or very into, and others people have been very unhappy with me for. So let's get going. One of my big theories is that Shallan is not going to be in the cognitive realm for the whole 10 years that we are in time skip time. You really are going to have a hard time convincing me that in that 10-year time, Yasna isn't going to master Elsgates, and that she won't be able to, they won't be able to use the Seons or Spren to communicate to Shallan to go to the tower, and Yasna opens up into the cognitive realm and pulls her through. I really think that could happen. Obviously, that doesn't bring her and Adolin back together, but at least she's with family after she's had her kids, which, that's my other big thing. Shallan is having twins. Or triplets. I think it'll be twins. I feel very certain that it's twins. I'm not against the triplet theory, but it's definitely not going to be one kid. If it's one kid, I'm going to be like, that's a missed opportunity. There should be twins. I'm excited for that. But the other thing is, what are those kids going to be like? We know officially that the Chana Mama theory is real, and Shallan is the daughter of a herald. So half of her identity is investiture being. Not to mention, she also spent a period of her time pregnant in the spiritual realm. What does that do to a person or to a spirit web? That's a great question that I'm really interested in having answered. It might not have anything to do with it. Time's kind of weird there, and while we know definitively that they weren't in the spiritual realm for more than 10 days, 9 days, well, yeah, I would say it's about 9 days. Shallan, no. How long were they there? It was a few days. Sorry, I don't have my book right in front of me. It was a few days that they were in the spiritual realm, so they weren't there for some inordinate amount of time. But also she's in the cognitive realm for a while. All I'm saying is, I don't know what that does to the gestation of a baby. There's already only 7 months to pass, since we know that that's how long the gestational period is for humans on Roshar. I don't know if that's for all Ashenites. Like if they also had the gestation period, I would assume so. But very, very interesting stuff. I do think that maybe she'll give birth in the cognitive realm, but I think that she'll end up in the physical realm, at least in the tower, before the 10 years is up. I don't see Brandon forcing her to struggle when that seems like a pretty obvious option. There's just no reason why Yasna wouldn't figure out how to bring people to and from. Plus, we know that within 6 years, she reaches out to Masha, which could entirely be this, like, what I think is going to be a Spren mailing system, because we know that Maya, in the aftermath of that 10 days, had walked to Urithiru and gotten into discussion with some Spren there and brought information back for Adolin about his father and other things. So there's still able to be some kind of communication, even if they don't have span reads. And we know of at least 2 Scions on the planet, so that's something. I think it'll be fine. I think it'll be fine. Relatively. But we know, of course, since she reaches out to Masha, some kind of thing is figured out. Maybe they figure out how to use Voidlight in their fabrials. Doubtful. Unless Retribution's just not around and he's not paying attention and they can find a way to harness it without him blocking it. I don't know. Those are my big Shallan theories. I do not believe for a second, I know some people think that she's going to world hop. Thydakar very clearly tells her, if you have people that you care about on Roshar, you do not want to do this, because by the time you get back, you will have aged significantly. There will be a huge, you could die. Basically, I mean, he doesn't say this, but she could age so much while she's gone that when she comes back, she could, drop dead when she steps foot on Roshar. So and then she thinks, I don't just have my life to be concerned about, basically, and puts her hand on her stomach, which is how we know that she's pregnant. So I would say she's not doing that. She's not going to just decide to be like, you know what, whatever. I'm going to abandon my husband and take my children away. I don't see that happening. I also don't see her going to Silverlight. Mainly, well, it's not impossible, but I just don't see... I think she's going to get out sooner. I like the Silverlight theory, but from what we learned about Silverlight and the Isles of the Emberdark, makes me really nervous. I don't think Brandon is going to allow there to be some huge age gap between Shallan and Adolin. He will let them have their relationship. We will probably see an awkward reunion and them having to find their way back to each other. And I'm really excited about that for the same reasons why I really like Steris and Wax together. I like that they organically fall in love as 2 adults, and it's not just like these 2 kids who instantly have this attraction to each other that Brandon does with his younger couples. I like that there's more time for them, and I would love for Brandon to represent a couple of these 2 people who have to relearn each other and re-fall in love with each other. Not that I think the love ever goes away, but do you see what I'm saying? I really think he could do that so beautifully. It's making me emotional just thinking about it. I think it's going to be a good decision. I think it's going to be fine. I think it's going to be good. I'm really excited about how he's going to handle them, because I don't see him just throwing that relationship by the wayside. There is something to be said, though. This is something that, not to burst anyone's bubble, but this is something that I've thought about quite a lot. We have this huge moment with Adolin in Wind and Truth where he talks about how oaths mean nothing and it's promises that matter. But then we also see him in his wedding with Shallan making oaths to her. And I'm like, I'm trying not to overthink this, but maybe, the marriage becomes kind of null and void because of their time apart and they have to renew in a way with promises to each other. I don't know. But I do not like that. I know that he's talking about different kinds of oaths, but you know what I mean? There's just... I don't like it. I think Adolin is too much of a good boy to do anything unseemly with anyone. He loves Shallan so much. They love each other so much. But it's one of the most heartbreaking things to me about all of Wind and Truth is how often they think of each other. And Adolin, if not every day, maybe not the first few days, but after a couple days, every day he has some thought about missing Shallan so much. And I love them a lot. And I think they're a great couple. And I don't think Brandon is just going to throw that away. I know some people have the theory that their relationship is just going to like dissipate, or they won't really get to have like a loving marriage with each other, but I disagree. On to Adolin, though. This is the theory that people don't like that I have, and that's that Adolin will develop a dependency, not necessarily an addiction, but he will develop a dependency on fire moss. There is grounds for this. I didn't just make this up, right? There is a surgeon who gives him fire moss on day 9 or 10. I think it's day 10, just before he goes to the throne room with Gox, and even makes a comment about how it's like a mixture that's particularly like dangerous. Like he says he normally wouldn't give it to someone because of how dangerous it is, but he's also, I think the subtext there is he thinks Adolin's gonna die. So he's like, at least you'll die not in pain. And that makes me very nervous because I think Adolin's big arc, he's going to be a leader, and he's going to be a fantastic one of the Unoathed. Adolin is a great character and a great guy. He's also going to be separated from his children, which is exactly what happened with Dalinar when the boys were little. And up until at least Adolin was like 13 or 15 or something is when Evie died. And so, Dalinar's on all these campaigns. He's never around his kids. He doesn't know them until Evie dies, really, at all. And that was because Dalinar was worshiping and prioritizing other things. War, power, his brother. Like, he didn't care so much about Evie or about his children. He was the Blackthorn at that point in time, right? More than he ever is when we see him in the books. And so I think that is something that Adolin has, especially towards the end of Arc 1, Adolin is struggling a lot with the things that he learns about his father, how kind of controlling in a way, or how Dalinar doesn't seem to really accept him as he is. Like, there's a lot of contention between them at the end of Arc 1. And there's this sort of element to Adolin where you can tell that he never wants to be anything like his father. Those elements of his father he doesn't admire, and that's the person he doesn't want to be, the man that's written about in Oathbringer, right? In Dalinar's book, Oathbringer. I think we have to watch Adolin confront becoming those things. He will become the White Spine, as he is referenced in Words of Radiance. And he will maybe not become as violent, but addiction runs in his family. If it's not the fire moss, which we have a reason to believe that it could be, maybe it's alcohol. I don't think it'll be on the same level as Dalinar's alcoholism. I don't think it'll be on the same level as Tef's addiction. But I do think there's a possibility that he will rely on these other comforts to cope with not being able to be present for his children, only ever seeing them through Sion Call. Like, at best, he's going to struggle a lot. Adolin's story is far from over. He's also an amputee. There's just a lot going on for him. I don't think his willpower will remain as strong as it has been in those ways. And I would not be surprised. I think it would be I think it'd be a good and interesting thing for Brandon to explore what that's like. If Adolin has the secret fire moss dependency where maybe every night he has his call with Shallan and the kids over the Sion, and it goes really well, and he puts on this face, and he acts like everything's fine, and it is fine because he's got it all under control, because they're not in close proximity to each other, so they can doctor themselves to be whatever they need the other to see in that moment. Adolin's always been very good about sharing his feelings, but he didn't have this trauma. He didn't have these things to confront. And while I do think he'll be honest with Shallan about some things, I just can see him kind of putting on a face when he's on the phone, and then once the phone call ends, the stress is still lingering, and maybe he rubs some moss between his fingers and goes to bed feeling better. And then maybe when they finally do reunite, he tries to not use it because he's like, well, I don't really have a problem. And then he gets really irritable because he's not getting what he needs. Do you see what I'm saying? And then eventually Shallan picks up on it, and it's something that they have to confront together and figure out together. And they're stronger for it. And he can confront himself and confront this place that he's in. Obviously, my focus in the Stormlight Archive is always very character driven. So that's sort of what I'm thinking in that world, right? I think it could be very interesting. I think nothing about back half is going to be fun. Like, I do think there will be fun things, but it's going to get harder. It's going to get much worse before it gets better. Like, if you thought anything that happened in Wind and Truth was bad, that is not the worst it's going to get. That is a promise. It's a promise that Brandon has already made us, essentially. If you've read Mistborn, you know that the books get to the absolute worst point up until the last 10 pages of the last book when there's actually some resolution. And it's done really well. It's not just hammering you over the head with these really negative things, but it gets really dark and really scary. Stormlight is not an exception for this. So I think we can expect that. And you know what we're all going to do? We're all going to say, thank you, sir, please more. Punch me again. You know what I mean? It's what we did the whole first part. We'll do it again. So, moving on. I think that Cultivation is not the bad guy, and I'm not mad at her at all. So, pass. I don't think Dalinar is coming back. Dalinar is in the Beyond, or he's with Noadon baking bread. He is not here. The cognitive shadow Spren, I mean, it's not even a cognitive shadow, it's a Spren. The Spren of him, the Spren of the Blackthorn, is not Dalinar. Dalinar's not coming back. And you know what? I don't want him back. Do you? No. His story's done. His story is done. Let him rest. He deserves a rest, I think. Amen. Okay? He's done. He's gone. And we can mourn him. I've mourned him certainly quite a bit. I have randomly burst into tears several times since finishing Wind and Truth, just thinking about him. So I get it. And I get wanting him to come back. But I don't think that's his journey. Maybe we'll get some spiritual realm impression of him that's not the Blackthorn, the way that we do with Evie, right? I'm also not certain that every time that we hear Elokar, every time that Gavinor hears Elokar in the spiritual realm, that it's Odium. I would assume that some of those times maybe are Elokar. That's just because obviously I love Elokar, and I want to imagine that is what happened. Because to me, the thought of that greasy-ass, old-ass, disgusting-ass bastard using Elokar's voice makes me rage. So, no thank you. Another plot point that I think is going to be more of not really at the forefront of things, but I do think we're not done with the Night Watcher. I think she'll come up again. They will come up again in some way, might even bond someone. And I think that'd be really interesting. Maybe Lift. I think Lift, obviously we know that Lift is going to play a major role in the back half as well as Renarin, or we can assume so since they're getting backstory books. I am so excited to dig into the kind of person, like the life that she had when she was growing up. We got little snippets of it in Wind and Truth. Just her thinking about living when she lived in Erie and these different things. We don't know much, but we're going to get it. Oh, it's going to rip our hearts out. I can feel it. Yeah, I think that Cultivation, I'm really excited to learn more about her boon and curse. And I really think that Cultivation is coming back to either prime her to take Cultivation or to prime her to bond. I think she did it to prime her to bond the Night Watcher maybe. I don't know, but I do think that there'll be a journey to, it's very close to Urithiru. Once they're able to leave Urithiru, which will probably happen relatively soon, there will be some kind of a moment, I think, where traveling to the valley happens. I also believe that there's going to be a journey to the Rift, the Rothalos Rift, and that there might be a confrontation there with the Blackthorn, hopefully between Adolin and the Blackthorn. I really see that being the way that the Blackthorn story goes. And I don't think we're going to see him until later. I think Brandon has said when he was on his Shard cast with 17 Shard for the Q&A post Wind and Truth earlier this year, he did make a comment that he does kind of wish he'd waited until later to do that. He understands the criticisms that it kind of cheapens the loss of Dalinar. And I don't completely disagree. I think that seeing that later would have been a cool, whoa, what is that moment. But at the same time, like, Dalinar's passing was very impactful for me as an individual. So it didn't fully cheapen it for me, but I wish we didn't know. But then also at that point, like, it might have felt like a retcon later. It might have felt like, how is that even possible? So maybe we needed to see it. I don't know. Continuing on, I think it'll be interesting. I think that Ba-Edo Mishram will attract the power of Odium back to her, potentially. Maybe she'll take up Odium. I could see them both leaving Taravangian, basically, both powers. I know a lot of people think that Honor might be attracted to Adolin and might be attracted to Adolin because of his old promises thing. I'm not so sure about that. This is kind of greater what else is kind of happening. I know a lot of people think maybe that Taravangian will die and drop both shards, and then they will go to someone else, like maybe Yasna will become Justice or something. I don't want any of them to take up shards. That's like my least favorite thing that happens, not narratively, but for the people that I love. Like, ascending to eternal godhood sounds so lonely and just horrible, and it makes me so sad, whoever it happens to, or whoever, like, it almost happens to. Every time it almost happens or does happen, I hate it for them. I almost mourn those people more than the people that we've lost, because it just feels like this. Wouldn't it be better to just, I don't know. Maybe that's just a me thing, but I really hate it. So I don't want any of them to ascend at all. But I could see Adolin holding Honor. I could see the plan just being that we let them alone. That we drop shards, and then the shards just kind of form their own consciousness. But Odium seems to really like Ba-Edo Mishram, so I could see it returning to her once she gets within close proximity of Taravangian, which I hope happens, and I hope she tears him to shreds, truly. What else do I think? Oh, one of my other things, this is more of like I've just been thinking about it. I don't know if I think it'll really happen, but something that I don't think Brandon is above. I think Navani could die pretty early. Like really early. Like book 6. I don't... I'm laughing because it sounds ridiculous, and it might not happen. It probably won't happen. I know a lot of people think there's more to learn about Navani. And there is, for sure. But I could also totally see her dying, and soon. Like, I could see, one of my big fears is that her being in stasis for so long with the tower is going to cause a melding of their consciousness, and then she just kind of becomes a Spren, or becomes a Spren with the tower, gets absorbed into the tower, and her body is like null and void, but then the tower continues working. Or that while she's under, they will discover a way to communicate with her by touching the what's it called? The lines in the wall. Is it garnet? That might make sense. I don't remember, but touching those lines in the wall and connecting with her, maybe they could speak to her that way. I think that, it'd be worth a try, but anyone who knows that you can do that is not currently at the tower. Well, Dabbit is. Maybe he could teach them. But I do think that's possible, or maybe not, since they're in stasis. Maybe not. But I do think it'll be interesting to see sort of, like, my vision about this is that, Fuse are going to try to break into the tower and kill her, and then they'll defeat the Fuse, and it'll be like, oh, great, we defeated the Fuse. Like, no one can defeat her. And then they try to wake her up, and she's already dead. And then the tower, like, falls, and not falls apart, but, like, stops working. That'd be horrible. I don't know. My brain goes to these doomsday places because Brandon can do that. Brandon does those things. He subverts our expectations sometimes and kind of does crazy, ridiculous things that are hurtful and painful. I could see Navani dying pretty early. I don't think we're going to see Kaladin again on Roshar for maybe the end of book 6 or book 7. I think he's going to be a really background player. And maybe he'll be like an interlude character in book 6, or just not as many POVs for him while he's still on Braze. His arc as an individual ended in Rhythm of War. That's why he takes a backseat and why he can take a backseat in Wind and Truth. He will be fine. He will return, and he will be Herald Stormblessed, King of all kings, or whatever. But or Herald of all kings. Praise him. He will come back as, Herald of Second Chances, whatever. Which I think will also be, we'll probably have this big him forgiving Moash moment. Oh, sorry about it. Just Herald of Second Chances. Come on. But he'll come back, and I want to see him come back with Syl. And Syl is like now Storm Mother, and she brings back the storms. They come back riding the storm, and Kaladin is leading it as fleet. Oh, I'm getting emotional imagining it. But I think that will happen. I think she'll bring Stormlight back when they do come back. I hope. Brandon's talked about calling it the Voidlight Archive and that there is no Stormlight left. But I think Syl's going to bring it back. Syl's going to bring back the storm. And it's all going to be okay. I'm really interested in seeing the role that Elle plays. I think, I get a little upset about some criticisms of Wind and Truth because I realized that it was set up. Some people believed it to be the end of the end of one movie and there will be a second movie. I think the end of an era and then there will be a second era. But it is the end of the arc, so there's more to come. There will be questions, and these characters did not die. And, most of them will make it to book 6. I think some people will die in the background. Hopefully not many. But I do, I saw some people complaining that Elle didn't do, Elle was being built up as this person. He didn't even do anything in Wind and Truth. I'm like, there's 5 more books. There's time. Let's get that out of the way. I also wonder if we will see Zahil perform his miracle, or Vasher perform his miracle in the back half of Stormlight. I think we will, because I think that just makes sense. I think it'll be by book 10 or book 10 that maybe before then that Vasher performs his miracle and gives up his divine breath and passes on. Don't know what it'll be for, but probably something Lift related, and it'll be like a mentor. It'll be like a Tyndall situation, kind of. Moment of silence. Anyway, I'm looking forward to that. I'm looking forward to seeing Lift as an adult. She'll be 25, just about, when we see her again, which is going to be crazy to see who she becomes. Especially, I feel like Navani took on a very maternal role for her, and knowing that Navani's not really awake, or just isn't awake, that Yasna kind of is being elevated to all kinds of different positions with everyone passing or whatever around her. And she's got her own thing going on. I'm not going to get quite into the Yasna thing right now because I have different opinions about it than most do, or than a lot of people do. And I'm going to wait to talk about that in a future video. I think that Yasna in the back half is going to be instrumental to the story. I've seen some people frame it as Lift is the Kaladin, Renarin is the Shallan, and Yasna is the Dalinar of the back 5 books. I think that makes sense. I think she'll be a main POV for most of the books. Obviously, we know that she'll be... Book 10 is supposed to be allegedly her backstory book. So, based on Brandon saying that at some point. I don't know. Someone has said it. It was Brandon, or maybe Peter. Someone said it. I'm on Reddit, and I think there's also a blob about it, but whatever. Yasna is supposed to be book 10. That's the whole deal. And so I think we will get more and more about her and her brain. But if you pay attention to her POV so far, this break at the end of Wind and Truth it was going to happen. That is evident, in my opinion, since Oathbringer. Really, since the beginning of Words of Radiance. Like, at the earliest point, there is an insecurity there present. Chapter 6 of Words of Radiance. So that is kind of, or maybe it's chapter 5, but very beginning of Words of Radiance, there's a seed of this insecurity that then comes up again in Oathbringer and comes up briefly in Rhythm of War and carries on into Wind and Truth. And so like this was coming. She needed to break so that she can come back stronger. Do I think she's going to process very well in the next 10 years? No, I don't. And I think most of her growth will happen on screen. I think that Yasna's story in the back half is going to be really good. I think we're going to get a lot of information about her. And I think that she's going to grow a lot and get to a very... She needs to find herself again and redefine who she is, because the person that she was in the first 5 is not quite it, right? And that's part of why that break came, you know, and if anything happens to her... Don't do it, Brandon. I'm serious. I think also that we're going to get some really interested Nihil bond stuff in the back half. We know that it's possible to be bonded to 2 Spren. Shallan's doing it. I think that we'll see some blending of orders, perhaps. They're going to make some new super orders. Maybe. I don't know. I do think, like, it obviously depends on oaths whether or not you're granted the surges. There's a strong Nihil bond between Aelin and Maya, but he doesn't have access to the surges. Maybe that's only because she's a Deadeye, but I do think it has everything to do with saying the oaths, because the Spren themselves just allow that connection. It's interesting. We'll see. We'll see now that she's no longer a Deadeye after Mishram was freed, if there's like some other element to that, to the surges. I do think it's oath-based, but I don't know. Maybe the Spren get to decide. I'm not quite sure. We'll see. Since, you know, Cultivation's gone, Retribution is doing whatever, and he's whatever. And it's, you know, Honor, we've got this saving of the Spren that's happened. It's very interesting. I've been doing a lot of, like, thinking about this new Oath Pact and, like, what it means. Are the Spren immediately in danger once the Heralds come back? Or so long as they're all, like, alive and the Oath Pact isn't completely broken, they will stay fine, like the Spren will be okay? I'm a little confused about that, because there's not really a direct... I've read it on the Coppermind. I've read every passage in Wind and Truth several times. Like, it just feels a little unclear to me when this new Oath Pact breaks. If it breaks when they return from Braze or not, because we know they're planning to return from Braze, but if returning from Braze means the Spren are in danger... But maybe they're not, because of that sliver of honor that came to Kaladin. Like, did that sliver of honor become the honor sphere, or were there 2? I don't remember that much, but I don't remember if it was the 2 that went to them or not, or if that, like, if there's an honor shard, little teeny sliver that went into this Oath Pact to preserve the Spren. I think so, right? Whatever, it's gonna be fine. The Spren are gonna be okay. I'm really nervous. If you can't tell, very scared. Very scared. So we'll see. There's just so much to talk about, and I'm really looking forward to talk about this more. So please leave your comments below about what your musings are about the back half. If you have any questions that we can all think about together. I'm really looking forward to all of the theorizing that is going to happen over the next several years, because the more time that we get, you know, the more WOBs we get answered, which, you know, not canon until they're written in a book, but they're close to canon. They're secondary canon. So we'll see. I'm really looking forward to it. And yeah, comment below any questions, thoughts, theories that you have, and we'll dig into it. Thanks so much.